Hey everybody, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always with some ideas and insights, what to pay attention to when you're growing and scaling your business. Now, today I want to take a deep dive into the single biggest factor that could make or break your business in the years ahead: employee retention and engagement. So the question we really want to ask here is, why do employees really quit their jobs? And oftentimes it comes down to the same 8 words, which I'll talk about. And I've heard those words over and over and over in my work as an executive coach. So, is it disengagement? Is it low morale? But the strategy that we're talking about today will be a game changer for you. So I hope you listen all the way to the end and implement everything that I recommend today. Because here's the truth, and this is a quote by somebody really smart, and I have no idea who said this, but the level of business you can build is 100% dependent on the level of talent that you can hire and keep. So yes, this is the same old problem that companies have been trying to solve for decades. I totally get it. You are in a fast-paced, high-growth business. Your day-to-day challenges are relentless, and you might feel like, who's got time to worry about people keeping happy, being fulfilled, all that good stuff. It sounds good, but is that really something that you can focus on as a business owner when so much is going on? But here's the thing. Employee turnover is quietly strangling businesses over and over, and is costing businesses lots and lots of money and lost productivity, the recruitment fees that you pay, training expenses. So research actually shows that replacing a single employee can cost you up to 90% to 200% of their annual salary. And, of course, what's worse is the statistics say that many workers are actively planning to leave their job within the next 12 months. If that sounds familiar to you, trust me, you're not the only one. But here's the thing, ignoring this is really not an option. Heidi, hello. And long-term success and sustainability of your business really hinges on your ability to attract, to engage, and to retain top talent. And look, for some of you, many of you, you might not think of your business as having top talent, but good workers who show up, who think beyond the job, who are your A players, right? They can't sleep at night without feeling like they've delivered exceptional value to you. And that doesn't matter what type of business, what level of business you have. That could be literally any single person who's helping you. And this really means, this particular piece means that you have to make a fundamental shift in the way that you approach having your team and leading your team. So the old school approach really is where most small business owners and leaders, employees kind of were the cogs in the machine. And that also means the thinking for a long time was that these people were interchangeable pieces to manage and control. And if you are forward thinking and you want to have a high performance organization, a highly functioning business, you must see differently at this point, for sure. We've had a few conversations in the last few weeks about, the newer generations. That's definitely more and more something that is crucial with these younger people. So if you want people to really show up and engage and deliver like an A player, where they really do it's not just a job, it is something that they're deeply engaged and passionate about, you have to treat people like true business partners and empower them and help them to think and act as entrepreneurs within your company. And that starts with hiring. When you are interviewing, you want to look for people who think on their feet, who crave autonomous thinking, who want to deliver at a higher level, who come to the interview prepared. They know about your company, they know why they're there, and they know where they want to go with this, right? So that's like one of the first telltale signs that it's a good hire, when you have somebody who's done their research, who knows why they're there, and who can actually talk about what they're looking for. And look, I mean, I have seen over and over and over how powerful this mindset shift is. I mean, I've been an executive coach for almost 20 years, and I've seen hundreds of leaders and thousands of team members that I've worked with. And it doesn't matter what size of business, what kind of business, what industry people are in. Frustrated employees is something that shows up everywhere. And what they really want is, and that's where the 8 words come in, and I shouldn't have counted them, because what it really comes down to, they say to me, and they've said to me, in, like I said, in any company I've worked with, I want ownership, I want autonomy, I want to be able to actually make a difference and have an impact. So think of them as, these are these smart, capable individuals that you hired to use their brains and drive your business forward. And the people that I talk to, far too often, they are trapped in a culture of micromanaging, rigid policies, and decision-making bottlenecks, which makes them feel powerless and demotivated. And it certainly means they're not bringing you their full talent, because if you're over managing, which I prefer to micromanaging, because I know where it comes from. I know it comes from you wanting to make sure that your clients are served well, that everything goes well, that there's no, uncrossed T's and undotted I's. I totally get it. But when you're over managing, that means that now your talent is limiting them, because if you're giving all the answers, if you're designing all the strategies, if you're doing a whole lot more than giving direction and empowering, that means your employees, your team will always be limited by your capacity, your creativity, your innovation, your thinking, because that's what you're giving them as a limit. And I totally appreciate the fear and the concern about making sure that people know what they're doing. But most often this is happening because you haven't created the structure that they can actually, that you trust, that they can execute within, that supports them to do the best possible job. Now, I've discovered when you flip that script and you start teaching people, you just start treating them like partners versus subordinates, well, for one thing, it gives them a whole lot more freedom. And that means when they have freedom to think and they have freedom to execute, it also means now they can bring their entrepreneurial spirit to the table. And you'd be surprised how many people actually are able to come up with that when you never thought that was going to be possible. And that's really, truly, when you do that, that's when the magic happens. So that's when creativity and innovation comes to the table, which means that now you can drive rapid, sustainable growth that transforms your business, because now you have created this unstoppable force. And here's the really important thing, that is not just dependent on you. Because I'm pretty sure every single person who's here, who's watching this, who's listening to this, you all want to grow your business, but you don't want that to mean it's more and more and more on you, because that's never going to go anyway. That is not sustainable, and it's frankly not scalable. So how do you make the changes? Now, here are 5 shifts that you can start making this week. The first one is celebrate the entrepreneurial thinking. So this means creating a culture with an entrepreneurial mindset within your team. And you start that by being willing to let go. It means instead of showing up and going for the least path of resistance or the shortest path, which is when somebody has a question, you just give them the answer, it means ask more questions. If you want a better answer, ask better questions. So this means you have to be willing to show up, not as the manager, as the boss, but as their coach, as their mentor, as their trainer, as the one who's showing them the way that you want them to think. So you have to be willing to let go. You have to be willing to listen to other people's input, because quite often what we've discovered is that when you have a certain way that you do things over and over, and in your mind that's the best way, well, that becomes the norm, that becomes the standard, and that standard now has become unmovable. Now, things change, people change, you're hiring people who are hopefully better at what they do than you are, so they're bringing new perspectives to the table. They might have updated perspectives because they're newer at this than you are. And if you're not listening, if you're not asking, if you're not enabling them to come to the table with those thoughts, then that means you're losing a tremendous amount of input. So that's number one, celebrate entrepreneurial thinking. Number two is cut down on those rules, cut down on the red tape, cut down on the excessive policies, on complex approval processes, because they are strangling your business right now. Like, oftentimes what happens is you start your business, you start hiring people, and you don't have any of this stuff in place. And of course, that creates chaos too. So then oftentimes business owners go and they create all these policies, they create all these rules, and now it's too rigid and it's too old school, because now things don't change anymore. Now we have to go back and kind of bring it to the middle, where you have to streamline the decision-making process, where you have to eliminate unnecessary hurdles to get stuff done. And that's what enables them really to deliver at a level that you haven't been able to deliver yourself. So that's number two. Number three is let them turn their ideas actually into action. And that, again, is a cultural thing, because you want to create a culture where your team is empowered to take action. That means you have to have systems and structures in place that guide them which decisions they can make on their own and which they cannot. So when you think about how is a structure, because I always say, structure sets you free. And that is, I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, just the thinking about structure, the thinking about streamlining, regulating, all that doesn't feel good. But like we just discussed, that's kind of what takes your business from that infancy stage to at least the toddler stage, right? But that's not where it can stay. That's when it's mostly on you. But when you're bringing in other people, now you have to bring in structure, but the structure is more like a guideline. So everybody understands, what's the direction. It always starts with what's the outcome that we're looking for, right? The outcome is always what we start with. And then you can help your team create the structure necessary to get to the outcome. So if there's some really important points, and some of you are in medical or in law, whatever it is, where you have to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's, everything is done according to the most important rules and regulations. But then there needs to be space for everybody to truly bring their talent to the table. So think of it as like you're setting these guidelines, but then you have to allow people to dance within those guidelines. And a huge piece of that is, and I think we'll do an episode on that next week, is you have to help them understand, hey, which decisions can they make on their own? Where do they need to get input? Where do they need pre-approval beforehand? Where do they just need to inform? And we'll talk about how to set up a decision-making matrix that helps everybody understand what the checkpoints are, but it also enables them to be autonomous without you. So this is when you do it right, that's really the super basic project management skills and leadership practices brought together that enable your team to operate at a high performance level. All right. So, but then the next piece is we want to make sure that anytime people have delivered at a higher level, that you go kind of back to what we talked about earlier, that you actively celebrate and reward this entrepreneurial thinking. Because think about this. A lot of your team members probably came from places where that was not necessarily celebrated, where that was not necessarily something that was encouraged. So a lot of people have PTSD from past positions that they have owned where they were sometimes discouraged or straight out actually punished for thinking on their feet. So you have to help them see what it is that you actually want. So actively celebrate and reward entrepreneurial thinking. And that what goes along with that, of course, is embrace open dialogue. So let's say, your team member brought a killer idea to the table. So it's not, your reaction shouldn't be like pat them on the back and then file away the idea and maybe one day you'll get to that. Your rule here is, or your role is, come to the table as a coach, as a mentor. So help them bring this idea to life. Unblock them, connect them with resources. I mean, this is really the conversation you should have during every one-on-one that you have on a weekly basis with your direct reports, where you talk about, hey, what can you think about? How can I unblock you so that you can really get to this goal? So connect them with the resources that they need, clear the path for them for collaboration, and make it crystal clear that this proactive problem-solving thinking is exactly what you want. That's like your big yes right there, and reinforce that over and over and over. And this part is the kicker for teams to truly think and act as owners. And then number 5, which is actually really the most important part that you want to start with, is share the big picture with them. They need to understand what your big picture thinking is. So they need to be able to see what the vision is that turns into strategic goals. They need to get performance updates. They need to understand what upcoming changes are. And if you followed us for a while, you've heard me talk about the 5 C's that start with clarity, context, and communication, right? And those are kind of the first 3 C's, the first 3 elements to set that every single person needs so they can be a high performer, so they can make better decisions, so that they can align with company direction. And if they can't do that, if they don't have those C's right there, they can't really show up for you the way that you want them to. So you might be thinking like, okay, great, this is all wonderful, but I don't have the time or the bandwidth to implement all these changes right now. It's almost the end of January, you're 1/3 into Q1, you've probably set some big goals for the year, but if you've neglected this part, this doesn't bode well for how well you'll do for the rest of the year. And look, I mean, I get it. I know as a small business owner, your plate is always overflowing. So the idea of overhauling your leadership style and your organizational structure might sound incredibly exhausting. But I will say here is you can't afford not to make this shift. Because the longer you stay stuck in the great daily grind, the more you are strangling your company potential for explosive and sustainable growth. Your team, your customers, all your different layers of customers are waiting for you to break free and unlock that next level of opportunity. But you can't do this alone. You can't do this with a team that's locked in and limited by your basic delegation and your, frankly, non-existing leadership skills. And the further you want to go, the bigger you want to go, the more it's important that you start focusing on this as a business owner, as a CEO, and then you bring in leaders who do the same thing. And honestly, this is where I so often see a humongous disconnect that you're doing it and you're even doing it with your leaders, but somehow they are still stuck in basic management and they don't do this with the rest of their teams. So everything is falling apart down the line. So that's where bringing in the 5 C's really is important, so that you have that consistency throughout your organization. Even if your organization is 5 people, it's still important that everybody practices these same structures that I keep preaching about, so that everybody on your team speaking the same language, is focused on the same outcome, has shared ownership over everything that we're doing. So if you're ready to escape this endless cycle, if you're sick and tired of feeling trapped in your own business, listen up for a second, because I'm about to show you exactly how to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit on your team, how to help them to become these high performers, to transform your company into a well-oiled, high-performance machine that can run largely without you. Also know that, though I know that's what you want, I know that overwhelm, stress, and exhaustion gets in the way, and sometimes you need small steps to get you going in the right direction. Following a blueprint can be really, really helpful. So I want to offer you something that we just developed. It's brand new. We just put it out. It's easy to implement no matter where you are at. It's 20 minutes a day, following this blueprint, following those easy steps every week that will help you get to this place. So I hope you can do that. 20 minutes a day working on your leadership structure and your organizational structure. So I will put the link below in the post, but it's bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com and then /scaling blueprint. So check that out. There's free case studies in there. Everything we talked about today is broken down step by step. Like I said, easy to implement, 20 minutes a day. You can make tremendous shifts in your business. So I hope this was incredibly helpful to you. Have a fabulous week, and I will see you next time.